Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm the advocate for injured workers here at the board, and my office exists to support the injured workers of New York State. We are here for you. In today's presentation, we'll be sharing important information about workers' compensation for employees who have contracted or who do contract COVID-19 due to an exposure in your workplace. We'll explain how and when to file a claim. And the when here is really important and one of the key reasons we're doing this webinar today. Because for some workers who got COVID-19 from work in the early days of the pandemic, the 2-year deadline to file a claim is approaching. You'll also learn what to include in your claim to show you had COVID and that your COVID-19 was work-related. So let's get started. I'll now turn it over to our presenter, Jen Donovan, and I look forward to answering your questions at the end.
Thank you, Joe. Let's start by taking a look at today's agenda. We'll start by explaining what workers' compensation is and what your rights are if you become injured or ill on the job. Then we'll discuss how workers' compensation can help those affected by work-related COVID-19, including workers who are facing ongoing or long-haul symptoms. We'll talk about the importance of filing a workers' compensation claim and walk you through the process of doing so, including the medical documentation that's needed to support your COVID-19 claim. Finally, we will point you to some helpful resources for more information or assistance with filing, and we will leave time at the end to take any questions. So let's get started with a brief overview of workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is a no-fault insurance system and is usually covered by insurance through an employer, unless self-insured. We'll discuss this more a little later in the presentation. An employer cannot charge a worker for the cost of this insurance, and it provides medical care and lost wage benefits to workers who are injured or become ill on the job. An employee is considered anyone providing services to a for-profit business or any compensated individual providing services to a nonprofit organization, regardless of employer size. The only exceptions are clergy and some school teachers, although the vast majority of school teachers in New York State are voluntarily covered. There is no cost to the worker to receive the necessary medical treatment for work-related injury or illness. This is a lifetime benefit unless a worker signs a settlement or Section 32 agreement that closes any medical eligibility for a payment. This includes all medical expenses such as tests, hospital visits, medications, physical therapy, equipment, and home care attendance. Transportation costs for travel to all medical appointments or treatments are also reimbursable for life, and there's no time limit to when a worker can file to have these costs reimbursed. Now let's discuss the worker's cash benefits, otherwise known as indemnity benefits. 2/3 of a worker's average weekly wage is payable while the worker is out on workers' compensation with 100% disability. This includes all compensation, for example, tips, perks, etc. The maximum benefit is now $1,063.05 per week. This is based on New York State's average payroll and is recalculated every July 1st. Benefits in the workers' compensation system are temporary, except in the event of a permanent injury. In that case, the worker will be evaluated to determine whether they have a permanent total disability or a permanent partial disability. Finally, there are payments for loss of use of a limb. This is known as a scheduled loss of use award and may be eligible for injuries to the following: arm, hand, fingers, leg, foot, toes, eyesight, hearing, or disfigurement. There's also a fatality benefit, which is payable in instances where a worker perishes due to an incident, consequence of a previous incident, or an illness, such as COVID-19 at work. With this benefit, funeral and memorial expenses are reimbursable up to $12,500 in the New York metro area and $10,500 throughout the rest of New York. Surviving family members are also entitled to weekly benefits, which are calculated the same way as the indemnity benefits, or 2/3 of the deceased worker's average weekly wage. Beneficiaries include the spouse of the worker, children up to the age of 18 or 23, and any disabled or blind dependents. If none of these parties exist, $50,000 is payable to the parents of the deceased worker. If there are no surviving family members, $50,000 will be paid to the estate. In terms of who pays workers' compensation claims, that depends. If your employer purchased an insurance policy, the insurance carrier who wrote the policy pays the benefits. If your employer is self-insured for workers' compensation, your employer pays the claim. Usually, self-insured employers use a claim administrator to handle claims, so you will be interacting with that claim administrator in that situation. That's known as a third-party administrator. When the employer does not have the required workers' compensation insurance coverage in place, the Workers' Compensation Board will pay claims so workers can get needed benefits, and then the board recoups the costs from the employer, along with any penalties for not having the insurance in the first place. Workers' compensation is a worker's legal right. If you are injured or become sick at work, you are entitled to workers' compensation. It cannot be negotiated or signed away. Immigration status is not a factor, and the board offers free language assistance if you would like it. So what is the role of the Workers' Compensation Board? The board administers and oversees the workers' compensation system. However, as previously mentioned, we do not typically pay the claims unless the employer has failed to provide proper workers' compensation coverage. We have approximately 1,000 employees across 26 offices and hearing points statewide. Our role is to ensure the system operates correctly by receiving reports of all injuries, payments, medical reports, and any other documents relevant to the claim. We will also hold hearings in front of an administrative law judge when appropriate to adjudicate or move a claim forward. Hopefully that gives you a high-level understanding of the workers' compensation system, your rights and benefits if you become injured or ill on the job, and the role of the Workers' Compensation Board. So now let's discuss what you need to know and what actions you should take if you contract COVID-19 at your workplace. The very first thing to do when you are sick or injured on the job is to seek treatment. In an emergency, you can see any healthcare provider, but otherwise, go to a provider who's authorized to treat injured workers by the Workers' Compensation Board. You can find one using the provider search on our website at wcb.ny.gov. You can also visit your local New York State Occupational Health Clinic for treatment from an authorized provider. You can search for your closest clinic on the DOH website, and that link is on the slide. Tell the provider who treats you that you believe you contracted COVID-19 from an exposure at work. Share any details about your workplace to back that up. For example, how would you describe your workplace? Was there public contact? Were masks worn? Did your coworkers have COVID-19? As well as any other circumstances the provider should know about your potential exposure. If your healthcare provider agrees, they will send a medical report to the insurer and to the board. It is best if the medical report includes your positive COVID-19 test result, but a medical report showing a diagnosis via a PCR test or by virtue of an examination may also be used. You will need to notify your employer in writing that you believe you contracted COVID-19 at work. An email or a document is best. A text message can be accepted, but it's not recommended because it's not easy to find and duplicate if necessary. Notify your employer as soon as you can, but no later than 30 days of becoming ill. Your employer is then required to notify its workers' compensation insurance carrier. Now let's take a look at how to file a COVID-19 workers' compensation claim. You should file a claim for workers' compensation. Workers are not required to file a claim because the insurance payer must notify the board of the incident. However, filing your own claim is a valuable protection and is extremely helpful, as I'll explain in a few minutes. You have 2 years from the onset of your illness to file your claim. This is especially important right now because some workers who were diagnosed with COVID-19 in the early days of the pandemic are approaching that 2-year deadline. So don't wait for a deadline. File as soon as you can. The fastest way to file the employee claim form, or the C3, is online. You can visit the COVID-19 area of our website, and that link is on the slide. You can also file a paper form, which you can download from our website. Follow the instructions on the form for submitting it to the board. If you have a PCR test result showing you had COVID-19, file that report. That's very important to your claim. If you had COVID-19 early in the pandemic and got your results by phone, as many people did, you should now get that result in writing and file that. So what do you need to share in your claim to show your COVID-19 illness is work-related? Most workers cannot point to the exact moment or method of exposure to COVID-19. However, you can demonstrate a high risk in your workplace if you work in an environment where exposure to COVID-19 is or was prevalent. For example, a hospital, transportation job, grocery store, or anywhere else. On the claim form, include details about where you work, how often you work, and your job duties, especially those involving public contact. While not all claims will be accepted, there is no harm or risk in filing a claim, even if it ends up getting denied. Filing a claim is important for anyone who believes they contracted COVID-19 at their job, and especially those who are missing work or experiencing ongoing symptoms, as there may be benefits that can help you right away. If you are experiencing long-haul medical issues due to work-related COVID-19, you may be eligible for free lifetime medical care. If you miss more than 7 days of work due to work-related COVID-19, you may be eligible to receive lost wage benefits. This may be very helpful to long-haul sufferers who regularly miss time from work due to medical appointments or worsening symptoms. For anyone who contracted COVID-19 on the job, whether or not you had access to and used paid sick time, whether or not you've since recovered, it is important to have an established claim, a record that your COVID-19 was work-related, should you suffer long-haul complications and need workers' compensation benefits down the line. If you already have an established claim for COVID-19, any lost wage benefits or ongoing medical care that is directly or consequently related to COVID-19 falls under that existing claim. For example, someone with an established COVID-19 claim may also need ongoing treatment for problems from COVID-19 related to their kidneys or lungs, or may develop consequential conditions such as anxiety and depression. If you need help filing a claim, you can call our toll-free customer support line, and that number is 877-632-4996. Free language assistance is also available. If you face resistance or obstacles to getting information about the claims process or are discouraged from filing a claim, please let us know. We will help you. Email our Advocate for Injured Workers at advocateforinjuredworkers@wcb.ny.gov. So what happens once you file? If the insurer accepts or agrees with the claim, it will be payable. This is known as compensable. If the insurer disputes the claim, a judge at the board will decide whether the claim should be paid. Right now, everyone has to attend our hearings remotely because our offices are closed to the public. While the attorneys must attend by video, injured workers have the choice to either participate by telephone or by video through the virtual hearing center. Your hearing notice will contain all the details. The judge may hear testimony to get the facts about where you work, whether you were exposed to COVID-19, the extent of the exposure, and whether exposure to COVID-19 was prevalent in your work environment. Remember, you do not need to pinpoint a moment in time when you think you were exposed. We review all the facts in a claim. From there, it is possible to appeal a judge's decision, and we have an appeal process if that happens. Now we'll take a look at the additional resources that are available to you. For more information related to COVID-19, including quick links for finding an authorized workers' compensation provider and filing a claim, please visit wcb.ny.gov/COVID-19. On that page, you'll also find numerous resources such as fact sheets, frequently asked questions, and more. You can also subscribe for email updates related to COVID-19 and workers' compensation by selecting the Subscribe for Updates button on the top of the page. For other helpful information for workers on workers' compensation and other topics, you can visit the workers page of the board's website at wcb.ny.gov. Finally, our advocate for injured workers is also at the ready to help injured workers who are having difficulty with their claims or trouble accessing their benefits. You can contact the advocate's office by calling 877-632-4996 or emailing advocateforinjuredworkers@wcb.ny.gov. We have a very active social media presence to help you stay informed on workers' compensation topics and for the latest news from the board. Follow us on our social channels to learn about future webinars like this one, as well as information webinars on New York State paid family leave. Our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube handles are on the screen. Thank you for attending this presentation on COVID-19 and workers' compensation. We hope you found the information helpful, and we will now take the rest of the time to answer any questions you may have.